Good afternoon and welcome everyone to today's special virtual event featuring a true living legend, a friend of ARP from Peoria, Illinois, Pastor Marvin Hightower. I'm your host, Lori Hendren. I'm a Senior Associate State Director with AARP Illinois, and today you're joining us for 2024. Each month, we're highlighting a true living legend in the state of Illinois, and today we have one of the best. I believe it's Pastor Marvin Hightower. Pastor Marvin Hightower was born and raised in Peoria, Illinois. Growing up on the South Side, he's witnessed the vibrancy of strong community. His father served as the pastor of the Morning Star Missionary Baptist Church, a church located on the Hightower Street, named in honor of his family. Pastor Hightower attended Richwoods High School during a period when Peoria Public Schools bused students across the town after integration. In 1994, he married his beautiful wife, and he wasn't until he was 30 years old that he accepted his call to ministry. Pastor Hightower and his family has spent a decade in Columbus, Ohio, where he attended World Harvest Bible College. Returning back to home to Peoria, he became the pastor of Liberty Church and re-engaged with the community, eventually serving as the president of the local NAACP since 2016. Pastor Hightower has been married over 25 years and is a proud parent of 2 children. I want to welcome you, Pastor Hightower, for today's event. And I'm going to start with some questions we have.
Sure.
Pastor, share a little bit about your journey and what has motivated you to become so involved. I mean, not so much about wove into the fabric of the community, particularly with the Peoria NAACP.
Well, as you mentioned earlier, we moved to Columbus and then moved back here after our sector call to become pastor of Liberty Church. And one of the members of our church was a part of the NAACP. And so she had invited me. And so I went to one of the meetings. And so I just kept going after that. Because once I got involved, I found out that a lot of the things that I thought we were past and had fought through we still were fighting for, even in that day and age. And that was 2010 or 2011. And so as a result of getting involved in the NAACP, I didn't set out to become president. I just set out to become a member, a community member that was want to be actively engaged in the community. But the path followed up to the executive committee. They asked me to be an executive committee. I did that for a couple of years. Then there was an opening for first vice president. So they asked me to do that. I did that. And then my predecessor was ready to step down. So he asked me if I would become president. And I told him that I would, except only if he would stay on the executive committee, I would become president. And so I did that, and here we are today.
So tell me a little bit, since you grew up in Peoria, how has, if it plays in Peoria, right? How has Peoria changed over the years, and what challenges have you witnessed?
Well, when I came back, it had changed dramatically. I mean, I still have a hard time uh, 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 swallowing how much Peoria had changed from when I left. And of course, there are several factors that play into it from what I'm understanding. That there were several from when the housing projects in Chicago got torn down, a lot of people relocated down here. And so that changed the face of Peoria and the community feel that we once had in Peoria. So after getting engaged and getting involved, I it left that, and I guess my world was smaller then too as well. It was more of a hometown feeling. Everybody knew their neighbors or other families across the city. Now their family, I mean, you hear a name and I'm like, well, I don't know their family, because when we were growing up and dating, you go to somebody's house, the first thing they ask is your name and who you're related to. And so they would know somebody in your family. But that has all changed now.
So, with your leadership as the president of the Peoria NAACP, what projects is your team looking to roll out to address issues of equality and justice for 2024? And I know some of them are always continuing, but for 2024, where's your footprint going to be this year? And I'm asking this on in a community civic engagement and then on like a city government level. So where are people seeing and to expect to see you guys?
Sure. And we're not only fighting for equality, we're fighting for equity. I know that's a kind of a buzzword, but really it's equitable diversity. And all that really means is helping people get the things that they need in order for them to be successful. And one of the greatest examples of equity came from our assistant city manager, where she said, we have these buildings that are fitted with handicap accessible doors. Now they were made or created so that people in wheelchairs would have access, or someone may have trouble opening the door. However, many people use that handicap accessible button, like delivery drivers and so forth and so on. It didn't take away from that building or even from anyone else using it. It just helped some individuals that need the help. And so we're fighting for equity. And so there are several areas that we are fighting for as far as governmental taxable bodies. One is with the Peoria Public School District. We helped develop a policy there that would help minority businesses and minority procurement, meaning anything else other than outside of construction, have an opportunity or access to opportunities that they may have. We've worked with the Peoria Park District, which is, I believe, it's the biggest park district in the state, to help write their policy that they have adopted and now have implemented to help minority businesses and contractors, and as well as people in the labor force, have access. And then we put an A on it, the diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, because they're a park district, to make it accessible for those individuals who have problems. So we help them write a policy. So now we are helping the city of Peoria write a similar policy to gain access to the opportunities that they may have there, as well as the county to do the same. Because one of the things that we're trying to say, one of the things we say and always have said is, if the city is a part of it, as well as all those other entities I named, if you want to do business in Peoria, this is how you need to do it, through an equity lens. So those are some of the 4 or 5 of the governmental taxable government policies that we're working with. Now we also are working with Peoria Public Schools on the education side, meaning we have an education committee, and what we do there is look at curriculum, help facilitate curriculum, and certain changes that happen. We want to know what's going to be happening so that we can best serve our kids here in the city, because it's the biggest school district in the city. And it serves over 13 or 14,000 students. Most of them, the majority of them, are African American. And so with the pandemic, and we're still discovering how the pandemic really hurt our children, we're working with them to craft policies and procedures, as well as to help address challenges in that vein, to help our children, as well as we have a political action committee. We don't endorse because we're nonpartisan, but we are political. And so we always are hosting voters registration drives and doing voter education so that we can spur voter participation, because we know that that's our way of helping drive policy here in the city, as well as in the state and in the country, per se. So those are some of the things that we are doing as a local branch at the local level.
That's remarkable. So I'm going to go off script. I'm going to ask you, that takes a tremendous amount of leadership and vision. And with that is, I would say, underlying teamwork. I've had the privilege of meeting your executive team, and I know you guys work remarkable for for the various initiatives. But for all of those listeners that are joining you today, as a leader with these very, I would be honest, very heavy and powerful initiatives, how do you go into a city government? How do you go into a school system and broach these conversations, as in, we're finding this is an opportunity for change to make a difference, and we can actually do it, and we can do it together? How do you do that as a leader?
Well, before I go into that, let me say that at the local level, the NAACP, no one gets paid. So these are volunteers. Everybody,
Yeah, I
including
know.
myself, are volunteers. So we give a lot of our hours to this through volunteer work. And then one of the things that we do and able to address these individuals or these taxable bodies
Mhm.
is because it's our money. And so that opens the door for conversations. And then also because of the history of the NAACP nationally and then local level, because we are one of the oldest branches. We're about 109 years old, 108, 109-year
Oh.
old ourselves, and the national is 115. So we were just, I mean, we've been in it a long time. So the strength of our name and the integrity of the association lends its
Mhm.
voice and opens many doors for us that would to advocate, and a lot of times it's done behind closed doors because that's
Mhm.
where policy gets changed because it's policy that, as you know, policy doesn't just change overnight. Everybody don't get what they want,
Nope.
and and sometimes you have frank, hard conversations, tough conversations when you're sitting across the
Mhm.
table from some certain individuals who doesn't that don't seem to see it your way. But if you
Mhm.
both come to the table with this in mind, making it better for our community, we can get past those tough conversations to come to some common ground so that we can address the issues with solutions to make it better for the city.
And you know what? That's what leaders do. They don't hide from the tough conversations because those are the real issues that have to be challenged, and you got to start chipping it away. And when you have leadership that sets to the table, you come in it with I think, a mindset of empathy, compassion, but directness,
Yeah.
because you got to get to the end goal. So this is a great conversation for all of our listeners. How do you go into a conversation with the ability to be direct, but you've established those relationships? So how do you get to that point? What's kind of your guidance for your listeners today to building those relationships? Is it is it being a great communicator? Is it being all over social media? Is it going to community events and extending your hand and introducing yourself, or is it all? I
It's
mean, I
all.
think that the world today is so much different than it was 30 years ago or 50 years ago.
Mhm.
How do you do it now?
It's all the above. It's all the above. It's all of those things you named. And sometimes it requires us not only to be advocates behind closed doors, but we have to be activists in front of the public square, meaning that we will hold a press conference, to call certain
Mhm.
things out, and that will get you, that'll call attention to an issue, and that allows the door to be open so that you can go in and have those conversations and get the ball rolling, so to speak. So it takes all of it, all of the above, to in order to, and then it also takes a stick to itiveness, if you, for lack of a better
Sure.
term, a stick to itiveness, knowing that there's a goal that we're trying to reach, and maybe we don't get that, they don't return the call the first time, but we'll just keep after them
Hmm.
and continue to pursue. But that's very rare when that has to happen. I tell you that.
You're
That's
also Pastor Hightower.
yeah.
I mean, we everybody answers. Let me ask you this: we talk about equity, and we're talking about kind of the change in communication, which everyone is. You know, if you're joining us on Facebook or YouTube, we're living in a different era how we
Yes.
communicate. So, walk me through technology, maybe even AI, when we look at the changes with healthcare and communication. How is that going to be leveraged for positive change in Peoria? And also, I'm going to just add on to this. If you're not from the Peoria area, can you give a brief description for folks? What is kind of the mindset? Like we had Caterpillar, we have a huge medical district, and how with all of those dynamics and all of those the union jobs that were there, how has things starting to change and leverage with technology? And I want
Well,
to add one thing, which you remind me of. There is no train tracks going into Peoria.
right.
Correct me if I'm wrong. There's no train going in and there's no train going out, which is huge. So go ahead.
Not yet, but we're working
Not
on
yet. We're
it.
24.
Yeah, but we're working on it. One thing, if there was any good things that any good thing that came out of COVID, that was this, being able to communicate virtually.
Mhm.
Before COVID, I never heard of Zoom, Team Meets, none of those virtual platforms. But when COVID hit, those things were already in place, and it allowed us to see the world differently and being able to communicate differently. We didn't have to necessarily be in the same room physically, but we could be in the same room virtually, which seems to lend itself to making it easier to meet because everybody has these crazy schedules, and
Mhm.
it's tough sometimes when you have over 10 people in a room to get all the schedules lined up. So uh, th- those virtual platforms has helped communication as well as emails, which we were already doing, and Instagrams and whatever that social media platform is. But the drawback is the seemingly the more connected we are like that, the more
Mhm.
separate we are
Isolated.
because you
Mm.
because a lot of conversations do need to happen face to face because you can get a better read from someone face to face than you can even do over virtual like this or even through an
Sure.
email because you can't really
No.
feel what the person is really trying to say, and sometimes the message can get misconstrued and you're not really trying to say what that email or text because somebody could catch you, and it happens
Mhm.
to me after I've dealt with something really pressing, and then someone will email me or text me, and I'm frankly I'm still working through what I just dealt with, and I
Sure.
maybe come across a little not as open to the conversation as I normally would. But I think it's here to stay. And I think this is the way we have to communicate at times. And I think it can be beneficial because it gets a larger audience. We have an opportunity to have a larger audience through
Sure.
virtual means.
Let's talk about a lot of the success of Peoria NAACP under your leadership and prior is based on collaboration and teamwork. As a leader, how do you foster those partnerships, the collaborations with fellow community leaders that you may not align on 100%, um, and civic leaders to be able to have those initial discussions on change and to continue those discussions?
Well, I enter into most relationships, or my mantra has been, I don't have to be the leader. I am more than willing to line up with you or even follow as long as we're going in the same direction. And that's what I believe true collaboration is. I don't have to always have the credit. That's not my thing. The credit I want is to making sure that we're continually moving forward for our community and continuing making things better for our community. So I enter with that mindset. Even when I sit across the table or go have coffee with someone that I know that we are definitely not going to align on most things. However, we're going to work together to find the one thing we can line up on, and we'll work on that. And so I have that mindset that well, no, you don't have to agree with me. I don't have to agree with you on 100%. But it's this one thing that we do agree on that we need to get to work on so that we can follow through. And I don't have to be the lead. I don't have to take the credit. I don't have to get none of that shine. You can have it all as long as we get the job done.
What advice would you give someone who, you know, seeing something happening in their community and want to make a difference, but it feels overwhelming? What is the initial steps? And I say one person, what's your initial steps to them to get the ball rolling on making a difference?
Well, I'll tell them you can only eat an elephant one bite at a time. And we didn't get here overnight. So I caution them, just because you may be passionate about whatever it is that you're passionate about at that moment, that it takes time, it takes commitment. There's a difference between moment, that difference between moment and a movement, and that sacrifice. You have to be willing to sacrifice. You have to be willing to work toward the end. And then I also tell them there are many different organizations, not just NAACP, but many organizations that you can uh, go check out, go get involved in. And for me, as far as the NAACP goes, outside of the NAACP, I tell the members and the executive committee all the time, get involved in the commissions and the boards that's a part of the city, because that's where money gets handed out. That's when you know what's going on in the city, and then we're able to address things in the city. So I say, go get involved in some organization, figure out what it is that you're passionate about, and how can you help this organization or that organization move what you're passionate about forward. Don't
I
be
love the
scared.
idea. Yeah, I love your statement. It's more than, how do you say that again? It's more than a moment, it's a movement. Is that what you
Yeah,
said?
yeah. The
That's,
difference between a moment and a movement is sacrifice.
oh,
Yeah,
say that one more time.
the difference,
Say that
the
one more
difference,
time.
the difference between a moment and a movement is sacrifice.
That's
Uh,
powerful.
yeah. A moment can be an event or a march, or that could be considered what I call a moment. But a movement requires sacrifice. A movement means that you're going to get behind the scenes. You're going to do the work that's not popular. You're going to go behind the doors and have those conversations. You're going to continue to work at it. And that takes sacrifice, because it's going to cost you time, energy, effort, headaches, tears, whatever the case may be. That's sacrifice. And that makes a movement.
Well, let's talk about a little bit of Peoria and what changes have happened in your tenure that you're most proud of, and what a difference it's made for all the residents of Peoria and surrounding communities, I would say, and their families.
Well, I would say we've had a record number, or never seen before, amount uh, of African Americans in the political sphere, from the school board to the county board to the city council, and even including our mayor. That is something that uh, has never happened before. I'm not attributing it all to me, but where Peoria is, and how things have changed on the positive road. It's because of things like that I'm most proud of, and how people are really getting involved in the commissions that are here, from diverse backgrounds, and my black people, minorities, are getting involved in what's going on in Peoria. Peoria is, even though it's a union town, it's really a conservative town, to be uh, honest with you. However, that's one of the most positive changes that I have seen, is the amount of involvement of people from the community in every area.
So, for individuals that are listening and they hear about the tremendous work your organization is doing and your leadership, how does someone be able to start, I would say, with city government for making change? I mean, you talk about, a moment and a movement. How do you, if there's not an NAACP, or if there's another organization that's powerful, how do you start having that conversation and start soliciting help? What is, as a leader, how do you use the tools that you deploy to communicate and start building relationships? Because I think a lot of the work that you and your team have done so successfully is built on trust,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's about how you raise. That's how I think.
Right.
But some people may have never been given the opportunity for that. How do you start building that with in this field?
Sure. I would tell people, or individuals, start going to meetings. Show up at the city council meeting. Show up at the school board meeting. And if you go more than once, they're going to notice that you are there. And what that will do, if you're not in a leadership position such as me, or just someone in the community that wants to start getting involved or want to speak to a council person or whatever, that opens the door, just by you being present and being there on a consistent basis. That shows them that how committed you are, and they will speak to you because they see that you're continually showing up. They'll be curious. Why is this individual continually showing up? you know, and you may or may not give in public comments or not, but just continually showing up and being present, and then that will open doors for you as well as someone that's not a part of any organization or even in a leadership capacity. That opens doors for you.
So, how do you handle? You have, let's say, as a leader, you get brought to you 30 different ideas for change from team members, members of your organization, or powerful speakers in community. How do you, as a leader, go through and assess those and start having those conversations to find the initiatives which are best for the organization while maintaining a team environment, being empathetic, but understanding kind of the policy initiatives that you want to move? So it's a leadership question. How do you empathetically handle all of the opportunities that come to you?
Well, as a leader, I always go back to the original mission of the NAACP and the vision of the NAACP, which is equity. It always comes down to what can bring equitable diversity to whatever the case may be. And so, of course, you get all kinds of suggestions, but of course, you can't do it all. I mean, and don't try to do it all. I just try to look at the severity of whatever it is and where could I or where could we possibly get in to help drive policy? How can we get in to make change? So it's kind of like, I'm not going to say guess, but we take things one issue at a time to see where we could fit in and what can we do as an association, because we're not legal, we're not lawyers or any of that nature. We're advocates, and we try to influence certain things. That's where we are. We have influence, and so we have to make sure that what we do first is backed up with some facts and data, because that takes the emotion out. And sometimes data will put the emotion in, especially if the data says something that you really don't like. So we try to assess things with facts and data, not just hearsay and innuendo. That keeps a lot of the chaos out of it as well.
Pastor Hightower, we're coming almost to the end of our session, and I would just open the floor to you. What are some closing comments, some tips, insights that you can guide us on for all of us look to 24 to make a difference in the community and the state that we live, whether you're one of Illinois' 1.3 million unpaid family caregiver balancing it all, or you're fighting for equity, you're doing your passion, whether that you wake up in the middle of the night to write it down and you can't wait to hit it in the morning when you start. What's your words of wisdom for us?
Well, I'll tell you this. This year, and I said this many years, this is one of the most pivotal years in our history in this country, in this state, and even in your individual cities. I would tell each individual to really look to see if you are really, and I'm a preacher, are you really loving your neighbor as yourself? Your neighbor is anybody that's not you. So are we really helping those who need the help the most? What can you do as an individual to help someone else who are hurting? It's not enough for us to my four and no more, or whatever. I'm good at my house when my neighbor, friend, or somebody I may not even know is hurting. But we have to take it upon ourselves. What can I do? How can I help? What can I do to affect change and love my neighbor as myself?
That's wonderful ways to end it. So I want to thank all of you for joining us today on our today's series. As always, please look to ARP for more virtual events and information. Thank you for joining us. And again, thank you, Pastor Hightower. As always, I learn more with you than Well, I just learned more with you. I'd rather be with you every step of the day. So, all right, this ends today's virtual event. Thank you all for joining us. Have a blessed day. Bye bye now.